Okay, we'll call this meeting of the Drum Point Property Owners Association Board of Directors to order. This meeting is being held following Robert's Rules of Order, so please don't speak unless recognized by the chair, and we're being recorded. So, first thing in my remarks, we got a lot to get on to, so I'm just going to say that I did have a meeting. I asked for a meeting with the sheriff to talk about the sheriff's department deputies not being able to enforce our speed limit signs. I found that out from the sheriff's deputies. So I asked for a meeting, and it was accepted by the sheriff. Sheriff's office or the sheriff?
The sheriff.
By the sheriff. The sheriff sent one of his sergeants to meet with me, and he frankly he acted like he didn't want to be here. Okay, and he listened to me, but he wasn't listening. And I tried it first. I started off by thanking him for the patrols we had last summer and how effective it was, and then I reminded him of our facilities here, and I gave him a tour of the office, and he seemed unimpressed. I did share the door codes and the beach gate code with them to put on their what's it called, blotter, to be able to, so that all the officers can get in and out as they need to. And then I started talking about the enforcement of our signs, and he said, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, I do know that Sheriff Riddle, Judge Riddle, thank you very much. Judge Riddle, who's the chief judge apparently, is throwing out a lot of cases. He's not allowing rolling California stops to be enforced anymore, and it went like that. Finally, and he said, you know, my advice to you is to call the state's attorney."
It's like the stop sign that comes out of Chesapeake Ranch Estates. Chesapeake Ranch Estates put the stop sign in, so the people that live there, they ignore it.
So I called the state's attorney, and the state's attorney said, well, you know, we can't control what Judge Riddle does, and so, you know, I don't know what to tell you. They kind of basically gave me the poo-poo. Said, perhaps you ought to call the county attorney. Well, I know John Norris from dealing with him about the STD. So I called Mr. Norris, and Mr. Norris was a ray of sunshine. He sat down with me and talked for about 45 minutes. We went into great detail about the problem and what was going on. By the way, the sheriff's deputies are still writing tickets. They're just not able to write them against our speed limit signs. So when you write a ticket, you can't say maximum 35 mile an hour in a 25 mile an hour speed zone. That won't fly, because the sign, the deputies seem to think that the sign, because it was hung by us and not the county, is not valid according to the judge. Well, that's not the case according to Norris. Norris researched it on the phone with me and said, you know, they just changed the state law. The new state law is the minimum speed or maximum, the speed limit on a residential district road is no longer 25, it's 30. And he said, I'm betting Riddle isn't enforcing any speed limit sign that says 25, because it's flies in the face of the new state law. So he said, if I were you, I'd advise the deputies to write the ticket for maximum speed of so-and-so exceeding 30, not 25. That should fix the problem. If it doesn't, come back and talk to me and I'll see what I can do. So I have yet to get a hold of anybody in the sheriff's department, but that apparently is the answer. I'm not sure we want to change our speed limit signs to 30. I think 25 is plenty fast on some of the areas of our road. You just can't write a ticket for against the speed limit sign. So anyway, that was my experience with the sheriff and how that went. And that concludes my remarks for tonight. So we're at public comment, 2 minutes each. Anybody have anything they want to say? No? Okay, we'll move on then. Sure, last chance. Okay. Public
I
comment.
don't know if you're aware that Dwayne Heideman's, it's either his father or I think it's his father, out in the Midwest is doing very poorly. So that's where he is right now.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's when you lose a parent and stuff, everybody knows that. Okay. So the next order of business is the approval of the minutes that have been sent out. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second? Okay,
I made
Discussion.
some minor, did you send them again?
I did not send them again, the one, I don't have
what
one.
was your minor change, do you know?
The green space was as I had ordered. I listened to
The
it.
green space?
You had asked whether it was green space or
Conservation.
conservation, and it was as I had worded it, that was correct,
Okay,
so.
You okay then?
yeah, there were just some minor, not, yeah,
The other
that's
things were
fine.
just minor.
Okay, we'll take it to a vote then. So all those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Passes. Next is the office update, Rhea.
Payments are coming in fast and furious. And, I've deposited $96,457 so far. I have another deposit over there for a little more than $8,700 and perhaps another 50 or so to post payments for. About 43% of the owners have paid in full. I just sent a request to the county for our general operating expense reimbursement from the special tax district in the amount of $24,133 for this last quarter. That still includes a good bit for snow removal. So that's, without that, it wouldn't have been maybe half that. June meeting, I asked for availability for the 17th or the 24th. That's a Wednesday evening. The 17th is already booked. So I told Ralph Swartwood to go ahead and put us down for the 24th. It's a Wednesday night at 7.
At the club.
At the club. And then the newsletter deadline. With that in mind, with the 27th or the 24th in mind, the newsletter will have to be in owners' hands by the 10th because there'll be a vote on the budget, so they have to have it 15 days prior to that. That means I need final input from any board members that want to give me anything for the newsletter by May 25th, and I'll process it the week of the 1st and have it out that week. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Rhea.
So that's June 24th for the next
June
general
24th.
membership meeting.
Yeah.
7 o'clock
I
at
will
the club.
believe I'm in New York that week.
Okay. You should send me your schedule.
I think some of us are going to be out of town. Okay, next we have round table. We'll start down this end. Larry, do you have anything to share with us?
I really would like to see us reintroduce the cleanup day, one in the spring and one in the fall. I don't know where we are financially, but I think that's just a real plus, so that's what I'd like to see us do. That's all I have.
So noted. Kurt?
No, nothing.
Nothing. Amy?
Nothing.
Nothing. I've already had my say. Fran?
I had my say just now.
Okay, Dan?
I don't have anything.
Okay, Max? And Aubrey. Okay, moving on then. Committee reports, action items. Jeff isn't here. So I'll just sort of fold it all together with the roads committee, what Jeff is up to. I remind everybody that we let the contract for the 8,000 some odd dollars on 3 right-of-way repairs. That'll come out of the STD. And that Jeff had recommended a paving project of $102,000 on Deer Drive and basically this whole section. Deere and Johnson, that whole area gets repaved. And he also recommended that we put paving paper or fabric under it. And that's his estimate of $102,000. Amy and I, this afternoon, took a look at the STD and our existing finances. Of course, this work wouldn't get done until next fiscal year, but we believe we have the money to be able to move forward with this. So I would like to go ahead and go forward and get bids. Obviously, this is a bid action. And by the time we get the bids in, we'll know better exactly where we are. And we can do a detailed analysis of whether we can afford to do it or not, and decide whether we're going to let the contract or a portion of it perhaps. So I'm looking for a motion to let, does everybody know about that work that Jeff put out? There was a handout on it some time ago.
No, there was no description of that.
We never got that out?
No, there's been no planning committee meetings, no.
Well, it wasn't a planning committee thing.
Why?
There was a roads committee meeting, and I did send it out in email. I did, yeah, I did, I sure did. In fact, here's a copy of it. Well, I don't have copies for everybody, but
Maybe we
It's-
should just do that since it is sizable, and meanwhile,
sure.
you
I'll
can
just hand it
explain
out.
what the situation is with
Let
the
me-
map right now.
How about if we table this while everybody gets a chance to
Is
digest?
this the only project that Jeff has recommended that fabric be used
Yep.
for?
Well, no,
No.
we did Harbor Drive too.
Okay, because I remember there was a project where he was discussing the repaving and the fabric,
That's
but I
it,
just don't know if that was this one or the other one.
this is it.
This is it. Well, let me go on
So
with
then I remember
the
the
roads.
repaving.
I'm sorry, sir.
Have you looked at the road?
I have, yes.
Great.
Yes, I do. And even if I didn't, I would probably defer to his judgment, being our paid engineer. That's what we pay for. But the thing is, down in Deer Drive, what's going on down there is that this area, especially down in here, down by Larry's house and wrapping around, is low to the water table's high, and there wasn't any real base put underneath it when they built the road. So it's spongy, and because it's spongy, the asphalt breaks up. There's a lot of alligatoring, and the asphalt is literally breaking up because of the movement of the subsurface. Putting the, Jeff is of the opinion, I'm sorry Jeff's not here to talk to it, he's of the opinion that in his experience, when you have road underlayment like that, if you put the asphalt over top of the fabric, it mitigates the movement and stops cracking, if not entirely substantial. Yes, Max?
We just spent a lot of money to redo that surface down there. It seems like an awfully bad expenditure of money there to be followed by $102,000 worth of paving. And I'd also like to say that this project's not in the budget for this year. Not a planned expenditure as yet, and the money may be out there at the county, but it's not in the budget.
It wouldn't be in the budget. It wouldn't be in the DPPOA budget. It would be
Not in any budget.
part of the STD budget, and it certainly isn't in the budget.
We spent the money from the budget last year, we paid all the triple rejuvenation costs. We used up all the money in the treasury, in the STD budget we paid in that year. For this year.
I will give you the details then of our conversation. There's $172,000 at the county right now.
I wouldn't deny that,
Okay.
but it's not been budgeted to be spent on it in this fiscal year.
Ma'am, please repeat.
That's incorrect. Go ahead.
Mary is asking for is approval to go out to bids. Not approval to spend money. The money will come from next year's budget. And what we confirmed is that we have the money in the SDD now, and we can cover both estimated costs for that repaving and all the other regular SDD type expenses that we would incur between now and October when the SDD bills are due. So all we have to do is float over to that, but it's not at Max has been saying to come out of this year's budget, it's come out of next year's budget. It would be done sometime after July 1st, next fiscal year. And what Gary is asking for is that we approve getting the bids so we know exactly where we are for that chunk of money as we move up to that budget period. And also, I know that we did do some repaving there, and I actually quizzed Gary about this. We did not repave 0.71 miles when we did it. I remember that was expensive, and we talked about it here. But it was not the full area. Secondly, I was wondering why we don't start all over again and take the whole thing out and put in a good solid base and then asphalt it. And then I remembered Terry Carlson from the county who used to say he believes in asphalt. So we're actually using the old asphalt as a base, and the fabric gives us an opportunity to have that base hold together a little better.
Okay, so this is an item for next year's budget then?
Yes,
It's not for this year's budget?
right, but for this year to get the bids getting ready for the summer.
All right, so the motion to proceed only to a bid stage without approval for any bids?
Correct. Yeah, bids only. Any other discussion?
Wouldn't this be the same as just getting an estimate for the cost from several contractors?
That's.
I'm gonna send out requests
When you-
for proposals.
But we have to go through that process anyway, why don't we just do it?
As long as that's the limit of the motion.
That's
That is
exactly the
limited
limit of the
motion.
motion. Anybody else have anything, Larry, Kurt? No?
Good.
All right, then let's take it to, all those in favor of the
Who made the
motion?
motion?
Oh, I did, who seconded it? Did anybody second it?
I'll second it, no one else did.
Okay, we have a second. Oh. You gotta watch me, obviously I can't follow Robert's rules. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries. Okay, now I'll finish the road report. We have had a few opportunities to succeed in the last couple, 3 weeks. We've had some complaints about road edges and driveways, and nothing of any real significance though. And some fences actually. And we've gone out and looked at all of them, and actually there was one complaint where a property owner said someone stacked wood in the way so they can't go in and do a perk test. And we went and checked that out, and it turned out it's not sure how you couldn't do a perk test because there was a pile of wood in the way. Because you go in there with big equipment, you can actually go around it. But anyway,
What was
we.
it?
I'm trying to bring some levity.
All right,
But we didn't find anything of any large consequence. There is only one place that looks like it may need some work, and I've asked Jeff to take a look at it to see if I'm right or wrong, because I did the preliminary. So that's all I have for roads. Next we have the Finance Committee.
I have
Finances.
nothing to report, we're just paying, and I think that we're gonna handle most of it, nothing unusual. And you have a profit and loss statement.
Okay.
We don't have a profit and loss statement at all.
Hey, there wasn't anything.
I'm sorry, I mean the balance sheet,
No,
bank accounts and other things.
Well, you remember, we're not doing the balance sheet because it has its various errors, and until we redo the whole books.
I would hope that the bank balances and the amount of money we have is accurate. Why would we be interested in that? You're telling us we have money and you're not showing us a balance sheet which would back up the fact we have any money.
How about next meeting, we'll fabricate
That's
a
a good
corrected
idea.
balance sheet.
Good idea.
All you have to do is asterisk the items that aren't exactly correct. You've done that before.
Okay.
I have a question on the profit loss here. We collected $17,000 in covenant fees this year. Why is that so high? We only billed 13,000 or so.
Well, I transferred the, I've been collecting a lot of back covenant fees. I collected from November forward when I sent the initial letters out and then filed claims. I've collected like 8,000, 8,500, I think.
So
I
8,000 of this is really liens we collected.
Well, the result of filing claims,
Yeah.
which, you know, so
Alright,
yes,
so then we're way behind on collection of covenant fees then.
we're not way behind.
If you take 8 from 17, that's only 10.
But that 8 also included the
It
regular
also
covenant
included
fees.
the current that was due for those same accounts. I mean, I don't have the exact breakdown between the current and the previous to that, I suppose.
Okay.
But that's why it looks inflated, is because I've collected.
And then also the STD current collections for STD 4 is only $77,000.
And that is.
We're 3/4 of the way through the year. All the real estate bills have been sent out and
Right,
due.
right.
So why is the collections way
Because
short
it's
of
not.
$230,000?
Because it's not. This is one of those things that with Toll and Griffith, they had me make a change in the way I account for the money of the county. If you look at, there's the 47,000 and 52,000 and 86,000, and then it has me subtract 21,000 in order to balance with the county. That hit the P&L and reduced us to 77,000. It's inaccurate. That's why Amy was saying with regard to the balance sheet, same thing. They've had me make changes that have put these little strange amounts on our documents, and that's why that one is. It's subtracting money, and it had me subtract 21,660 from the total we're getting. Total we've gotten is 164 according to this, if you look at total STD. But you have to add the 21,666 back to that.
Well, but that would include the STD 3 payments too, of 86. Still put us only at $70,000 collected from STD 4 after all payments have
No,
been due.
it has 99 plus 21 is 109, 110,000.
I only see 47,000 and 52,000.
Because if you turn the page, you'll see where there's on
Oh,
page
minus.
2, in parentheses, 21,660. It's in parentheses, meaning it's subtracted
It's
from the
subtracted.
total.
I'm
Yes.
saying even if you took the positive, you only got $70,000 collected.
You have to add that back in. The way Toll and Griffith is having me account for the amount he held at the county, forced me to put the journal entry, and it created that subtraction from the total we've received. I have an email into Jeff about it, he's not responded.
I'd like to come and talk to you or the finance about that, because I don't understand how they can be doing that.
Because they're having me show it as accounts receivable, not an asset, but accounts receivable.
So all the money which is in the bank at the treasury of the county, and we haven't received it, so they're counting that as accounts receivable to us.
Yes,
Well, why don't we show that under accounts receivable?
because it's not to show on the P&L, it shows on the balance sheet.
So they made a lot of recommendations for the accounting system of this DPPOA without fully making it balanceable or
Which is why I'm still meeting with them.
visible here. This just keeps going on for another year again. We have no idea how much money is actually in the bank anywhere. And you're proposing that we spend another $102,000, when obviously it should be.
What we have at the county is 171,000, as of the end
It's
of
accounts
February.
receivable.
Yes, it is. That's what they're calling accounts receivable. That's what, Toll Griffith wants us to show it.
This accounting system is really not very adequate for reporting anything, in my opinion. As a longtime treasurer, always had accurate reports. I just don't understand. how they can go on for a year without reporting them not doing correct or making necessary corrections. I mean, we make corrections to corporate stuff all year long, everywhere. I don't understand why we can't get it straightened out.
Any other comments? Okay, let's move on to the environmental committee.
I'm losing track of where I reported this, so I'll be very brief. State Highway Authority actually came to look at the tremendous amount of sediment coming through the big culverts under Rousby Hall Road into Leeson's Cove Canal. They came without contacting the office. They did contact the neighbors, the immediate neighbors, who actually let us know. But I'm absolutely thrilled, and it looks as if Fran is too. And if you'll recall, when the State Highway came about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, looked at the problem. It was a high-level manager, and she said it was very obvious that there had been basically holding ponds, a series of holding ponds to capture that sediment before it went into Leeson's Cove Canal, and that was damaged after 56 years of use, and it has to be fixed. And she said she was going to send an engineer out, and that is what has happened. And we're in the process of contacting that initial person, the State Highway Authority, and eventually something will happen. They won't dredge, but they will hopefully stop the leaching. Because that goes into Mill Creek and messes up the oysters. Okay.
Okay, planning committee has no report because there's been no meeting. Safety committee, Mr. Holder.
2 items. Max asked that we report the incidents, and we did have an incident where we lost one of our cameras to vandals, rather maliciously, and it was reported to the sheriff's department, who will look into it and see what they can do about it. But it does show that within our community we have some people who really won't abide by rules, and no matter what you do, people will take vandalism to the point of taking out some of the security cameras that we have. We only lost one, so that's good. But it's being looked at, and I don't have anything more to say that. A camera we can replace for about $130, and that's underway. The second thing I'd like to mention is that at the general meeting, a longtime volunteer at the Sullivan's Volunteer Fire Department, his name is Alex, better known also as Alejandro Velasquez, for those who speak Spanish. He's been about 10 years with the Volunteer Fire Department here in Sullivan's. He stepped forward and wants to assist us in any way he can. He lives on Perrin, which is just behind, actually, our house over there in that area, on the Eastern Cove area. And he would like to join our safety committee, simply to form a closer bond between the fire department and ourselves. He came forward with a suggestion of, do we have an AED, which is an automatic defibrillator, in layman's terms. And I said, well, we looked into it, but we haven't come up with a solution, but we'd be happy to work with him, both in trying to position one here. Our CESC is for sort of pre-positioning emergency equipment, and if we could have some discussion maybe among the board about what, we could either put it in a box outside the house here, put a sign up, or have it inside, And so that some of the volunteer EMTs go directly from their house. The procedure is if you go by the accident from your home to the, don't bother to go to the fire station, you go straight to the accident if you go past it, whether it's a fire or an incident or you're an EMT person. In other words, if you live over here, where Amy lives, you don't go to the fire department and then come back to this place. You would stop here. And if we had an AED here and somebody needed an AED, the police carry AEDs. The fire volunteers don't carry them in their cars. They'd have to go back to the fire department. So if we had an AED here, logistically, it might be a good idea to have an AED around here. We balked at that because for a variety of reasons. I think the training, access, and cost are one of the factors. But anyway, that's somewhat of an aside. But I would like to ask the board if they would approve. We have 11 members. We're limited to a dozen. Members of the safety committee are myself, Gary Heel, who is the liaison between the board. Max Munger is a member of the safety committee. John Ivanchek, Leah, Larry Rich, Chris Moody, Peggy Duffy, who's going to be leaving, I
She
understand.
has left.
She has left. Amy Rispin, Ralph Swartwood, and Joe Frost. These are the 11 members currently. So we would have room for one more. If we scratch Peggy Duffy, who has left, I'm sorry I didn't see her before she left, that we'd still be under our minimum requirement according to the insurance company. So I would ask that the board consider, and by motion, since the members have to be, since it's a standing committee, that Alejandro Velasquez be voted on to the safety committee.
I'll make such a motion.
I'll second it. All right, good. All right, any discussion on that?
I have a question. You said the insurance had a requirement of a minimum of 12?
That's correct.
And then
Minimum.
earlier you said that the maximum limit was 12.
The maximum, I'm sorry, let me clarify. I can't have more than a dozen.
So the insurance doesn't have a minimum of 12, the insurance has a maximum, or the insurance doesn't care?
No, they do care. It's written in the,
Okay, so does the insurance also say a maximum of 12 members?
the board approved only up to 12 members, and that was cleared with the insurance company. I don't have it in writing from the insurance company, but that's what the board approved, this board.
Okay, because I was just confused about that statement
I
about the
missed-
insurance.
As they say in Washington, I misspoke, I'm sorry.
So the board has approved only 12 members.
That's correct, a dozen. I have the wording of the proposal, we'll take your time.
But the insurance company is aware of how many they are and have the names, and need the names for insurance purposes.
Yeah, that was just the minimum, maximum stuff
I
that,
apologize,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
They will insure up to 12.
up to a dozen, right?
Right. Any other discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of confirming Alex
Alex, if you want to use this one.
as a new member of the safety committee, raise your hand. Opposed? Good.
I have one more issue having to do with Alex. He, as you know, the police have access to this building. He asked me if he would be having access. I said, I don't have any authority to give you access to this building. That opens up the issue of whether the fire department, if we had an AED, or whether you wanted to give a member of the volunteer fire department access to this building. Heretofore, of course, all the directors who are on the safety committee, of which there are quite a few here, have access, and I have access. I'm the only board member, I guess, who has access here. Whether none of the other safety committee members do, I said to him, I cannot give you access. This is something I don't have the authority.
Well, that kind of begs the question of two things. One, is having an AED a good idea? One. And two, if we have it, where do we put it so that it doesn't get vandalized, is what I'm thinking, or do we leave it out not worry about it getting vandalized. And 3, where does it come from?
Well, I'm gonna talk to the chief of the fire department, whose name is Ford, he lives right over here on, actually, you know who he is, somebody knows Ford.
Heavy set guy,
Yeah, he lives, right.
sells cars.
I don't know if he sells cars. But
Is that
Fire chief, okay.
he's
No,
not fire
it's-
chief. But he lives right down Mills Creek Drive. As you come down Harbor, instead of turning left, you go, apparently he lives on the right-hand side, the second door in, or second house in. Anyway, according to Alex, they have an extra AED. I don't want to go too far with this because there's a lot of discussion which has to take place, obviously preparation. He also would like to see one down at the beach, down at the Drum Point project, for obvious reasons. And so this, as you say, Gary, it raises a lot of issues, several issues, which I don't think we can resolve tonight.
Okay.
It's something we all ought to think about.
Well, yeah, I guess we should be thinking about that for future action. And my personal opinion is it's a life-saving piece of equipment, and we would be serving the community well by having it here. In my mind, and I'm only speaking for myself in my mind, putting it outside is probably just inviting somebody to come tear it down, because we seem to be having that. Putting it inside, then you have to, people can't get to it if they don't have a code to get in. And it's a security issue to give that code out to too
Well, you
many
could
people.
put it in the garage, maybe.
Well, that's really locked up.
That's locked up
That's
even
locked
more.
with a padlock.
You would have to,
Yeah, Max, you
But the
have,
fire department supposedly has access to this building along with the police department.
I don't believe we ever, I personally have never.
Well, they used to, that was the whole deal, was they had access to it.
Well, that would be something we could do.
And, of course, that would give any fireman in the neighborhood the access, which may be a security problem, but you'd have to trust the firemen to do the right thing there, that they come in and get the AED.
Well, we
because
trust
he-
the policemen.
What Alex had discussed was that if he didn't have to run back to the firehouse to get one, if he knew he could get one over here. And if he's a member of the safety committee, possibly we could give him access to the building, along with the other members of the safety committee. Training is still another problem, and I would think it would probably boil down to more in the direction of having a trained fireman come and get it and use it, rather than one of us other lowly people who don't have that experience.
There is a certain amount of maintenance cost for AEDs.
Yeah.
You still have the floor, sir.
yeah, he said that they can give AED training, and he would be willing to do that.
Yeah.
It's almost idiot-proof,
Yeah.
because it'll talk to you, whether it'll give it to you, it won't give it to you if you're under certain circumstances. It won't allow you to give shocks if you don't have it set up properly, or there's no purpose in it. But you're right. He could be one member of the safety committee, aside from myself, who has the key to get in. We don't have to have the other safety committee members have access. He could be an exception. So that would solve that kind of problem.
Good.
But I'll finish up on that note.
Dan?
Well, I don't think we need a motion at this point, but I would suggest that the safety committee should continue to look into this idea and gather information and prepare a proposal that could then be brought to the board, and then we would have something to make a motion about.
Yeah, I agree, that's actually what I was gonna suggest too. Anything over here?
Well, I was just thinking we could actually put a side door on the garage that they had a key to and build a nice place for it. Then they could have access to that, rather than coming in here.
Well, I'm concerned about all the radio equipment and, of course, our personal files.
Right.
And, fire department, post office, I don't know. I don't wanna have everybody have access to this building.
No.
I don't think it's very wise, but I think your suggestion would be possibly a solution.
Max?
Peter, probably you should add to your list to check with the insurance company about any one of us being trained or using the AED, supplying that as an additional service
point.
to
Right,
the,
which
to the
is,
community.
Excellent point, Max.
I'm sure it's not in the policy at this point.
Well, why don't we,
But he can cover that, he's gonna.
yeah, so why don't we just send you off to work with Max and whoever you, Max, sorry.
Max, you're on the
Alex.
safety committee, remember?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
And Larry.
and anybody else you want to
Larry.
work with, and bring a proposal
And me.
forward.
And Rita's on the safety committee, we got a lot of people, so thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Okay, and of course
I will-
he's on it, Alex is on it.
I will inform him that he has been approved by the board.
Okay, moving on, old business, the beach gate. Everyone remember that we left it open for a month and it is open right now. Max has a motion.
I move that we continue to leave the beach gate open until
Right.
we gather sufficient experience, open or closed, open versus closed,
Do we have a second?
to make,
I'll second it.
to make more a future decision, and that we review this again in the next board meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Discussion on that?
Peter?
That's great.
We can bring it up every time until we decide to make it a firm decision. Sir?
I was down at the club meeting before coming here, and one of the board members of the club asked, how do we measure whether it has been successful in having surveillance and everything down there? And I said it's based on the reporting we basically get either to RIA or by Joe Ruggieri and his wife, or other people who live in the proximity and who do the gates. And so I thought that was an appropriate question to ask. I said, how do you measure to what degree this is all being successful? Now, on the gate, it falls into that same category. Do you have less or more with the gate open or closed? I can't answer that, but it's a very difficult thing to measure.
Well, I do have one thing to add, that one piece of information that's come to the office, and that is, I think it's Mrs. Joe, expressed her opinion that she didn't think it was a good idea to leave it open.
she thought it
Was
was
a
a
good
good
idea.
idea, she did not.
Was not a good idea. Okay, that's her opinion too. Which is
Exactly.
we ask.
Did
So,
she say anything,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
did she say anything about, I mean, we've been doing this during the cold months. Did she say anything about seasonal changes?
No,
Just, okay.
where did I hear that from?
She might, you might have been speaking
I
at
heard
the
from
meeting,
somebody.
maybe, on the 28th?
I mean,
They were-
Someone told me
I
that.
think I
It
told.
was
I
not
think-
Mrs. Joe.
I think Joe told.
I think she told you at the last membership meeting.
Is that where it was? I heard it somewhere.
The general membership meeting.
Max, you had somewhere.
Yeah, well, there is, one criteria is how many people even bother to say anything about it, one way or another. But I forgot, your first point, Peter, was the camera functioning long enough to identify the person who destroyed it?
Well, they
How
took
would
it,
we
didn't
know
they,
if
Peter?
they have it?
No,
They snuck up from
They
behind.
shot.
Oh, they removed it.
No, they
No.
shot it at an angle.
It's in the room, you can look at
The
it.
chip is not good?
The chip was good, but they didn't get into the view of the camera. They snuck up behind
Well,
it.
it didn't really see
They
the,
shot it.
They
shot
carefully
out the
did it.
side.
Let me get it.
oh, they shot it out. The shotgun,
Oh, the 22.
so the 22?
And the bullet self-destructed, so you couldn't do anything with that either.
Of course, so we have an incident of firearms and an incident of
Police took-
vandalism, destruction on the beach.
The
Whether the
police
gate was
took
open or not.
very close notice of it. They really did. Now, is there anything to be done?
You can count the bullets.
So,
Oh, my God.
okay, let's move on. So the beach is just gonna ride for
Shot
another
from the
month.
bottom,
Now look at the side.
All right, moving on, new business, you can pass that around if you want. New business, reserved expenditures. This is Gary's line item. And I'm not sure how this is gonna be received by you guys, but let me tell you, let me do my pitch. We have, I sent an email out, I hope you all saw it. We have a situation with the floor that we've been trying to work out for a while. We have a situation with the well expansion tank or pressure tank is failed. And we have piping that is clogged with gunk, so that the water doesn't hardly come out anymore, and if you run the water of any length of time, it turns black. It's because of the stuff in the pipes. I've consulted with 2 plumbers, and both of them said, oh yeah, we can clean those pipes, but then the pipes will be no good. They'll be full of holes, the pinholes. Can't do it. So you gotta replace it. That's the bad news. The good news is, there's only the sink, the commode, the shower, the kitchen sink, and an outside spigot. There's very little water here. I have an estimate of $2,500 to do that. I have an estimate of $1,000 to replace the tank, and I have an estimate of $1,600 to do the floor. And while we're doing it, I'd like to go ahead and fix the ceilings in here. This one's coming down here, and in the other room, it's the surface of the ceiling is collapsing. And I'm expecting that's gonna bring the $1,600 up to $2,500. So that's $6,000. To do that, I would like approval to do it from the asset replacement funding, which has $18,700. So I'm looking for a motion to do that.
Well, I would think that, since this continuously, the assets of the building, I would think that that would be the right thing to do. So I would go ahead and make the motion.
Okay. How about a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we have discussion now? Anybody want to talk about what we're doing, Max?
Well, these are repairs to the building, they're not really asset replacement. And previously, the work you did to the building, you refused to use the reserve monies for that, and you took it out of the current budget. So I'm just wondering why we're treating this any differently than the last time. Since these are just general repairs to the building, they should just be taken out of the budget
Well,
correctly.
some of it actually can, the well repair and the piping is an asset replacement and can be taken
I don't
out.
believe they're in the reserve schedule. I'd have to look at the reserve schedule to see if they're in there.
Yeah, I did that. And the flooring does not, and the painting of the ceiling does not. It's true, but with board approval, we can use it for that purpose, in my opinion.
Well, that's not the opinion of the reserve study, the reserve purposes or the reserve allocation, but, the borough board feels that they can just reverse their decisions on it. Then they can go ahead and do that too.
Can't stand it anymore.
You didn't pass them
Okay,
along.
other discussion?
You got Dan?
Dan?
Well, if we don't do these things and we let them continue to deteriorate, then at some point, this building will become uninhabitable and therefore we will lose the asset of this building.
Well, that's a good point.
Well,
So,
then again,
from that
I think
perspective-
one of the things is that since this is sort of a community emergency center, we need to have potable water in here. We really need to have, things that are dependable. So, I mean, it seems to me it's a necessity.
Okay, Dan?
So from the asset perspective, not doing this will lead to loss of this asset. So I think that's justification to use asset replacement / maintenance money for this purpose, because it's going to maintain and keep viable this asset.
Other discussion before we go to a vote? Okay, all those in favor of allocating $6,000 from, let's make it a cap of $6,000 from the asset replacement fund to make the repairs that I discussed,
This fiscal year.
effective right away. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very well. Thank you. The next item under new business is corrective action. This is where Gary falls on his sword. At the last general meeting, if those of you that were there will remember that I called, when we had nominations from the floor, I called for a second for that nomination and then took a vote, and the vote failed, so I refused the nomination from the floor. In fact, that was incorrect parliamentary procedure, and as a result, it was pointed out to me later that same day that I had made a mistake, and so I'd spent the next 2 days trying to figure out what had to be done about it. So I went to our attorney, and the attorney and I talked for an extended period of time, and we went into great detail. We even talked about proxy votes and all sorts of things, and we discussed everything, including can someone nominate themselves, which I thought was suspect as well. But turns out the correct action, or let me start over again. Because what I did was incorrect parliamentary procedure, everything from that point on that had anything to do with that action became null and void. That is, the subsequent election was null and void, and the voting was null and void. So, the only corrective action that can be taken according to advice from the attorney is to send out a ballot like we normally would with all nominees from the floor on the ballot. And so he also suggested that I get approval or concurrence from the board so that we were all of one voice on it. So I would ask for a motion from the board to send out a ballot with 4 candidates on it.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Dan?
I'd like to add an additional caveat on here. At the meeting, we told the membership and we told the 3 candidates nominated by the nominating committee that they were now going to be on the board.
Yes.
So we will need to notify, at a minimum, those 3 individuals to let them know that they are not board members in waiting, so to speak, but they are back to being candidates. We will also need to let the other individual know that that person is a candidate if they wish to be. We need to verify that
Yes.
that is still desired by that individual. And once we have that verification, then we will have to reactivate the nominating committee and instruct them on the continuation of their duties in the election process. So that all needs to be accomplished
That's correct.
under this motion.
Yeah, there's several follow-on activities, yes.
If everything turns out to be go, we also have to notify the community. You know, like the website, as well as the newsletter, which is going to be coming out. There's going to be timing of a ballot.
Ballots will go out before the news.
I did ask that question of the attorney. He said, no, you only have to notify the affected parties.
Yeah, but I think after giving the community meeting that we should put something on the website.
I can do that. I'm just saying the ballots will likely go out before the newsletter.
Yeah, they would,
So,
when they get the ballot, they'll know.
Well, the letter should explain why the ballot's going out. That a
Dan.
mistake was made and
We
it
could also post a notice at the big signs for Drum Point that there is an important notice for the community on the
Good
website.
idea, good idea.
Because a lot of people never go there, but if we put up some signage, that will let them know, hey, you need to go look at the website.
Where am I gonna get signage?
But we could use for the road sign.
What would you do?
There's also email blast. I
Yeah,
mean,
we can do that.
I think
It's a good
it's
idea.
important enough.
May I?
One second. Anything else from the board? Anybody? Go ahead.
Does this person still want to be considered a nominee?
Well, then, we don't know that.
You gotta check that first before you
Yeah.
put her name on the ballot?
Absolutely.
Right,
Well, I have to notify
Okay.
the 3 candidates from the nominating committee and make sure that the additional candidate really wants to serve before we move forward. Mr. Holt?
I'd like to just speak again as a former member of the nominating committees, that 2 issues come out of this. One is the distinction of having gone through all the candidates, and then having the committee make nominations. And then having anybody who wants to have a second or even nominate themselves from the floor, also receive the same status as a nominee from the committee. And I use the word nominee very carefully. Dan, I just want to distinguish between a candidate and a nominee. You're not a nominee until you've actually nominated yourself from the floor. We could have 50 candidates, but there's a nomination procedure. And I would like to give some credit to the nominating committee for having gone through the procedure of being a committee and making a recommendation and having any Tom, Dick, and Harry or Sally nominate themselves from the floor. Otherwise, you negate the purpose of a nominating committee. I mean, what's the point of having a nominating committee if anybody who is a candidate then, by action of saying, I want to be a nominee, they automatically become a nominee? You see the dilemma there.
I struggle with this with the attorney.
So I'm going to back out and leave it.
Yeah, well, I struggle with it in the conversation with the attorney, and we reviewed the bylaws. Unfortunately, the bylaws are sufficiently vague to allow that. I would suggest that perhaps the bylaws need to be changed or revised. Right now it says nominees may be accepted from the floor.
Nominations, maybe.
Nominations may be accepted from the floor after the committee has made their report. But I think let's let this settle, and then we'll come back and revisit this at a later time on how the procedure of nominations are done. Max?
Yeah, I think again, tell me if people disagree, but when we send out the letter which explains why we're doing a ballot, you should just carefully say that the nominating committee recommended the following 3 candidates, and the other candidate was nominated from the floor, per the bylaws. And that tells them exactly how they got on there. And that tells you which ones are the recommended
That
candidates.
discriminates.
Yeah, we can't do that as discrimination. The attorney may
Well, you're sitting here
specifically.
making the differentiation between a nominee and a candidate and how they're presented, so I'm just saying you present that.
But we cannot, in the ballot, it must go out exactly as it's always going out,
Well,
without any differentiation. Yeah, I'm telling
I'm
you.
talking about the letter explaining why the ballot.
Well, that's the same as, if it accompanies the ballot, it's the same thing. You can't
We
do
don't
that.
need a letter, just a ballot with the
You
floor
can't do
names
that.
on it.
well, as I
It's
understand.
discriminatory. You can't do that.
Reading Robert's rules on this thing, as I understand it, is that the nominating committee is there to recommend, a particular slate. They don't nominate the
board.
slate.
The recommendation.
Nomination is accepted.
All they do is recommend, the candidates.
The nominating committee recommends a slate. That's exactly right. If we want to revisit the bylaws and see if we can reword them to make it more clear, that's fine, but that's for another time. And we don't need to belabor this, guys. Dan?
I was just gonna say, I've written a note here, once the elections are done, so that situation is done, then we need to pick up the bylaws clarification issue and propose an amendment to the bylaws to clarify exactly what that nominations from the floor means and establish a process for it.
Okay, so because of the sensitivity of this is the last question we'll take, or the last comment, I'm sorry.
I seem to remember, despite the deadline for the newsletter, that we have had nominees who appear on the ballot say something in a newsletter that was available during the period that people had the ballot.
Yes, that's correct.
And even if the newsletter goes out, whatever the timing,
Before the election.
it seems to me that the newsletter would be in people's hands before the ballot is due.
That's correct.
So I would hope that we'd have that.
The ballot's always been, at least in my memory, has always been due June 1st. We could, I suppose, change that. I don't think the
I don't
bylaws address
remember what it
that.
says, it's been so long, I
It's always
don't, he's
been
got the
June
book right
1st.
here. It says 30 days before or something, I don't know what it says now.
I have the bylaws
I don't think the,
there.
There's a whole procedure been written up in there.
I don't know that it gives a date.
I don't think it's a date, I think it's 30 days before the general meeting or something like that. Maybe 45 days, I don't even recall.
It's under Article 9. The nominating committee shall send a ballot to each property owner. The ballot shall be sent at least 15 days before the annual meeting, which is in June. A committee of at least 3 property owners on the vote shall tally. No current board member or candidate or member of the nominating committee may be a teller. The election of the property owners to the board shall be on the basis of votes cast, period. There's no date. It's only gotta go out go out 15 days before.
Which is the same as the
Which is the same
newsletter,
as
as
the
I
newsletter,
recall.
so it should be concurrent if we do it that way.
All I'm saying is that the ballot has always said must be returned by June 1st. That's just been accepted procedure apparently.
Well,
Imagine we can do it whenever we like, as long as it's 15 days prior.
where's the procedure in the policy manual too that usually added to the things that we decided on? Man, it's been so long since
I do
I've
not have my
referred to it. I don't
policies and
remember.
procedure manual in front of me. But I'll point out that the
There's a
policy and
detailed policy
procedure
and procedure.
is a guideline.
It seems to me that we have a motion on the floor, don't we?
Yes.
All right, but in terms of the newsletter timing, the ballot timing, Mr. President, it seems to me that you and the manager can work that timing out, so to the extent possible, we can have something said, put before the community about each candidate in writing, if we can do it.
Well, yeah, just set a deadline
It's-
for the newsletter for the week before or something. I mean,
It's an administrative detail and is frankly off the target of this motion.
Right,
So I'm going to call for the vote on the motion.
What was the motion?
The motion was to send the ballot out with 4 candidates.
So we have to agree to send out a ballot now instead of the decision that we didn't make before.
That's correct. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Opposed? None, okay.
But with the
Were you
caveat,
opposed?
no,
Okay.
no, I was, Layton gave my hand up
Okay.
in favor of it.
Okay.
But we have to remember that we have the caveat of, first, we have to contact
Yes,
the
we,
candidates and all
those
that other
procedures
stuff.
have to be done, absolutely. Okay, I lost my place here. Next meeting, thank you. It's usually the 7th, I'm sorry, the first Tuesday, which would be the 5th.
okay.
Is there any objection to the 5th being the next meeting?
5th of May, and I am in New York.
Well, let me point out that next month is going to be a very busy month. The Finance Committee is going to be doing their work. Hopefully there'll be a presentation on the 5th for the budget. The budget has to be approved before the June meeting. There will be time to revisit it again on the June meeting. But for it to go out in the newsletter, well, yeah, we still have time in June, don't we? What do you think?
Well, if you go-
1 second.
Show it to the board on the 5th of May, you've got a month or more to do it, geez.
If it's
It
ready
has to
then.
be in people's hands by the 9th, actually, it's 15 days. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, but the June meeting will be on the 2nd.
Correct.
Okay, so all of May and June, we may have a second meeting, that's where I'm going to, because the budget, if it becomes controversial, we'll have time for everybody to understand what it is and work out those details. Max?
Yeah, I have a motion under new business here that I'd like to make. And that is that due to the fact we haven't had any meetings for such a long period of time, and I'm not too sure who's on what committee now, is that the chair of every committee invite and notify every member of the committees as to the time and location of future meetings. In times they can plan ahead. The existing one is merely a notification on the website, and I consider that to be insufficient. especially since it's only put up 24 hours in advance.
Is that a motion?
That's my motion, is for the chair to notify every member of the committees of the time and location of the meetings when they're decided.
I can't do that. But the chair of each committee.
Yes.
I would think that would be a normal procedure. Do I have a second? No second. So the
Okay,
motion
nobody
dies.
cares, okay.
Well, I think if we standard procedure, if a
It
case.
has not been standard procedure.
Really? Well, that's just plain ugly. All chairpersons of all committees, if they're gonna have a meeting, need to notify the members well in advance. I mean, that's common practice, should be. Very well.
Is it addressed in the policies and procedures manual anywhere?
It says that they'll notify them on the
You
website.
can let him set it
No,
up and
emails go
pay.
out. I send out a lot.
It's common practice to notify it.
It is common
I
practice.
just sent one tonight to finance.
So what was the date?
Oh, I didn't get it.
May
I sent it
5th?
late this afternoon.
May 5th is the next meeting.
Right.
Hey,
Well,
order,
I
please.
certainly didn't get this other one either.
Order, please. Order. Okay, May 5th is the next one. Fine.
If my audit schedule allows, I will try to call in. But
We'll call you if
the
you
way
want.
things have been going this year, I have been working many late hours, especially when I'm up in New York with the audits, and so I don't even get back to the hotel until after 7. And that's before going to dinner.
We know he's partying.
Yeah. Okay,
You know,
next item is public comment again. Any comments from the floor? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
Seconded.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're out of here. Thank you, everybody.